Good morning, Campbell and Creary here at Amvest Capital in New York. Welcome to the Amvest Capital Inc. live webinar with Pancon Resources Corp., usually known as Pancon. Pancon trades on the venture as PUC, Papa Utah Charlie, and on the OTCQB as PUCCF, Papa Utah Charlie Charlie Foxtrot. We do hope you'll enjoy today's program. It will also be in replay mode about an hour after the event, and the original sign-up link will work for the replay. You can catch this and other exciting programs in replay on demand and registration for future events at amvest.com/webinars. Amvest is a New York-based specialist investment bank and corporate finance firm focused solely on the natural resources sector. Very important disclaimer, this call is for informational purposes only. Pleased with us to have today Leighton Croft, the president and CEO. He's actually based in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is less than an hour from Brewer, where the asset is, and has more than 15 years of experience in the global mining industry. Has had senior roles at Ivanhoe Mines, Rio Tinto, Peabody Energy, Airdene Resources Development. He's been president and CEO of Pancon since 2017. And again, following the presentation, do please send in your questions in the question pane of GoToWebinar. Dig up the email, and we'd love to ask them in real time, macro, micro, anything that's on your mind. And then when we finish up, we'll be asking you for feedback. Please just click on the link there and share a few lines. Thank you. Like it, don't like it. Here's my thought. I'm going to send you a thesis, whatever. We love it. With that, I'm going to pass this to Leighton and tell us the exciting news here that's going on in South Carolina, actually. So.
Yeah, thanks, Campbell. And hello, everybody. Good morning from sunny Charlotte, North Carolina. And Campbell, before I get started, I just want to make sure you can see me and hear me. And can you see the presentation?
Yep. You'll hear from me if it goes sideways. So.
Yep. And I do want to tell everybody that on your control panel, you will see two handouts today. The first is a corporate presentation, which I'm showing right now on the screen. It's also available on our website, panconresources.com. The other handout there is a news release that we released at 6:30 a.m. Eastern time this morning, announcing the completion of our phase 1 drilling at our flagship Brewer Gold project in South Carolina. And that is also on our website. So let's get started. It's very exciting to be with you all and hopefully to have a good dialogue today. This screen is the first slide of our presentation. It's an aerial view of the former Brewer Gold Mine. This is about a little less than an hour and a half drive south of Charlotte, and it's about 12 kilometers along the trend of the Carolina Slate Belt from the Hale Gold Mine, which produced about 150,000 ounces of gold last year. And Brewer was first discovered in the 1820s as having a lot of gold at surface. And in the 1980s and 90s, there was an oxide gold deposit right near the surface that was mined, and 178,000 ounces was produced. This is an aerial shot looking straight down, and it's very handy because you can see this is the former pit. About 7 million metric tons of material was reclaimed into the pit. And we know that material contains sulfide-bearing rock that hosts gold and copper, in addition to waste rock. So I want to go very quickly through a couple of slides today, and then I'd like to move into the news release of this morning because it's full of information. And then I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions and answers. So just to set the stage here, Pancon is an exploration company. We are exploring Brewer. We have the exclusive right to explore Brewer and an option agreement with the government, which currently owns the property, to buy Brewer. It's a very prospective brownfield site. In the past year and a half since we've been working hard here, we have done a complete analysis of historic data. We've done geophysics with ground magnetics, gravity, and resistivity IP. We've done a 90-hole shallow drill program, and we have now finished phase 1 of a 10,000-meter diamond drill program, which is fully funded. The first phase was about 2,700 meters, detailed in our news release, and I'll show a map of where we drilled those holes. We're very encouraged by what we've seen so far in the rock lithology. However, I want to say straight away that we have not yet received the gold assay or the multi-element geochemistry results yet. We are eagerly awaiting those, but we do not have them yet, so we have not and cannot report on any such results yet. So let me just set the stage. Here's the Carolina Slate Belt. You can see these black dots are gold prospects. The golden stars are gold mines, past and present. Here's Hale, here's Brewer. We're in a fantastic neighborhood for gold exploration and gold development and mining. I mentioned it's a past producer. We're near the Hale gold mine. It is technically a Superfund site under control of the government, but it is at no environmental risk to the community of the environment, and it's been de-risked thanks to our partner on this project called Environmental Risk Transfer, and I can speak about them a little later. We have excellent local support at the community level and at the government level. We have the exclusive right to explore Brewer until October 2023 and the ability to purchase. And as I said, we're fully funded for our first 10,000 meters of drilling, and we've just finished the phase 1, about 2,700 meters. We also control about 1,500 acres in addition to the 1,000 acres of Brewer in mining rights, exploration rights, and the option to purchase land all around Brewer. So that's called the Jefferson Project, which we wholly own. So the footprint is about 2,500 meters in total. Our goal is to discover a new gold mine at Brewer, and we're taking a very iterative, systematic approach to producing and studying data. And we're right in the heart of the process of drilling, which is, we all know, is the lifeblood of a junior exploration company like Pancon. A little bit of history: the first gold rush in all of North America was here in the Carolinas. The Reed Gold Mine in North Carolina in 1798, and then Hale and Brewer in the 1820s. So to be able to explore at a former gold mine is an extraordinary opportunity, and it gives us kind of a head start, and we have a lot of knowledge about what was explored and mined in the past. Chris Cherrywell, who's a senior advisor for us, was the geologist that discovered the oxide gold mine at Brewer in 1983, and so we've got an extraordinary team of experienced geologists who know these rocks and know this geology and know this region extremely well. I'll get into that right now. This is a slide of our team, and most of us live nearby, and we're able to access the site on a daily basis, which is important, particularly in this time of COVID, where a lot of movement is restricted. Patrick Quigley, who's a Colorado School of Mines graduate, lives in Rock Hill, is about an hour drive to Brewer. He's our exploration manager. Chris Capps is 2.5 hours away down in Evans, Georgia, near Augusta. Chris has been working in the Southeast as a geologist for 4+ decades, and he co-discovered a high-grade gold project called Buzzard, which is geologically, we think, an extension of Brewer to the southwest in 1997, and he's been exploring in and around Brewer and Hale in this region for many years. I mentioned just a minute ago Chris Cherrywell, our technical advisor, who discovered the oxide deposit at Brewer in 1983. Lori Curtis and David Mosier, very experienced geologists and executives in the junior mining and mining sectors, are also in the team. So we have a tremendous team taking us to where we want to go. This is a roadmap that goes back to April of 2020, because that's when our option agreement began. And as I said, we've done data compilation, we've done geophysics, we've done shallow rotary air blast RAB drilling, and we're now right in the heart of our diamond drill program, and we've just finished phase 1. So we're going to be looking at those results when they come in, reporting on them, using them to then design phase 2. So I'm going to go quickly now through some of these slides, but this inset map down here shows you in blue, the land that we control through exploration rights and rights to own through private lease agreements with landowners, called the Jefferson Project, which I mentioned earlier. It's about 1,500 acres, and it wraps all the way around Brewer, giving us a very nice footprint for exploration. And I want to emphasize that Brewer is a very large system. The alteration zone and the geochemical sort of alteration zone is really big. It's on the size of Hale down the road, which is a multi-million ounce gold deposit in a producing mine. There's a small town here of Jefferson of 700 people or so that was established back at the turn of the century in 1905 because of the mine. And it's a community very familiar with mining. In fact, they're very supportive of our endeavor and would love us to help stimulate the economy and create jobs. The past exploration has all been shallow because really folks were focused on getting that near surface oxide gold, and the past producer used the cyanide heap leach method to extract it. So effectively they ignored, by that decision, all of the sulfide hosted gold and copper, which we know is there from historic assay results and logs and core, and which the lithology of some of the holes that we just finished drilling looks identical to some of the holes that were drilled in the past that we have core for and assays for that were highly mineralized. So it's all very encouraging. We're drilling deeper than anyone has ever drilled. I'll get into the depths and the details in a bit. And I'm just going to kind of zip right through. I'm going to talk later again about this case study, but on slides 19 and 20, there's a case study that we focus on in our presentation, which we have in effect kind of brought to life with our drill program. And this slide here will show you, this is the former mine, the boundary. It's all been reclaimed. It's all been filled in, again, with that gold and copper bearing waste rock and sulfide hosted tailings-like material. And these two holes, 1983 was drilled BD8002, 1997 was drilled B97-4 at an angle to the south. And we have some information about these holes, and you can see how we plotted it here in gold values here, 7+ grams of gold here, 7+ grams of here. This is the bottom of the pit, this cross section. And what we did with our hole number 5, which I'll talk about in a minute, is we drilled it, we twinned BD8002, but we really wanted to test this effective gap between the end of BD8002 and B97-4, and especially noting that there's some good grade 7.1 grams ton, 7.6 grams ton in those two historic holes down here. And there's a coincident IP anomaly that was produced by our fourth line of IP that we did last summer, right north-south, going from north to south across the old pit right here. So keep in mind that, and this is a map of our RAB results, which we will get to in the news release in a minute. This is our capital structure. We have about more than half of our shares are either with management and directors, institutions, or high net worth individuals with whom we have good relationships. And we've got more than $3 million in the treasury. So we're fully funded and well and ready to go. I'm going to just highlight in the appendix a couple of slides. These 3 slides are full of information, so I'm not going to get into them too much right now. Again, this is available on our website, but you'll see here the history of Brewer going back to the 1820s all the way through today to really give you a sense of what's happened there. These are details about our option agreement with the government, represented by a receiver. And this is details on our partner I mentioned at the top, called Environmental Risk Transfer, or ERT. So now I'm going to toggle over to our news release. This news release was put out earlier this morning, as I said, and it's hot off the press. This is fresh news. And the headline obviously here is that we have finished phase 1 drilling. I'm going to talk about these 3 highlights and then go through some of the images that we included in the news release. We drilled 2,692 meters. We drilled 7 holes. Now, 2 of those holes, we used the sonic drill method. Sonic drilling is very useful when you're drilling loose, unconsolidated material, even sand. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, the previous operator, before they left and abandoned the site, they reclaimed into the former pit old waste rock and material that, frankly, ore that they were sulfide ore that they were trying to leach, and they were unsuccessful with that. And they put it back in the pit, about 7 million metric tons. So it's relatively loose and unconsolidated. It's difficult to drill with a typical or traditional diamond drill. So we brought in a sonic drill, and it proved very successful. It wasn't without challenge, because it's always difficult to drill through rock that's been broken or is otherwise loose. And one of the upsides of using the sonic drill method is that we got some very excellent samples, very large samples, and those are currently at the lab getting tested. We're doing traditional assay and multi-element geochemistry, but we're also starting to look at some of the metallurgical aspects, because no one has ever studied this backfill material, this waste rock and sulfide ore from the previous mining operation, and we want to better understand what the potential is for making some money from that. The second dot point here is really, really exciting. Our holes 4 and 5 on this drill program on phase 1, we intersected lithologies that are typical of highly mineralized zones in the historic mine and the historic core from Brewer. And I'll speak to more of that when we go through the news release a little bit, but this is very encouraging. And so just from looking, you can see how similar those are, and the historic core had very good grades of gold in it, and we think that there's good potential for the core that we've been drilling in phase 1. As I've said earlier, the assay results and the geochemistry results are not yet back. At the bottom of this first page of this news release, we actually talk about, there's an unprecedented amount of drilling going on right now in the US and Canada, and that in a sense has overwhelmed the labs. We're using primarily ALS out of Nevada, and they use a lab in Vancouver for some of the work that we're doing. Their turnaround times, unfortunately, are up to 3 months once they receive material. And so what we've tried to do to sort of short circuit that bottleneck is we're working with another lab, an ISO certified smaller lab that can do complete gold assays in Michigan called MPC. And so MPC is helping us cut down these times, these turnaround times. They're helping us with sample prep, and they're also starting to do the complete gold work, the gold assay work, whereas ALS will take care of the multi-element geochemistry, which will include looking for copper as well as other elements, including rare earths elements, which we also note in this news release. We have seen in earlier samples we've taken from sludge from the site. I'm going to move to the next slide here, and this is a visual that I think can be quite helpful to us. I'm going to try to zoom in here. Let's see if I can. Ooh, yeah, okay. Zooming in. So this map, what it does is it shows both the 7 holes that we just completed in our phase 1 of diamond drilling, but it also overlays the 90 shallow rotary air blaster rad drill holes. And this legend down here shows from each hole the highest grade gold sample. And we talked about this earlier in a previous webinar. This news release about this, I think, was November 16th. There's a hyperlink to that news release in this news release today, and it's on our website. But you can see that, we got some very exciting drill results from the shallow program, and anything that's in this sort of pink color was above 1 gram a ton. This one down here, right here, was 3.6. This one was 1.7. These were about 1.5. And then if it's red or yellow, you're still talking about pretty decent gold values. But every single of the 90 rab holes had detectable gold, and that's very encouraging. There is a lot of continuity of gold at surface all across, we think all across the Brewer site, and certainly this shows a sort of a 2-kilometer north-south corridor, if you will, of gold. Now, shifting to our news of the day, it's the 7 holes that we just completed for this first phase of our diamond drill program. And you had hole 1 here, which was to the south. All of the holes the 5 holes that were angle holes were all azimuth to the due south. Some of them were 65-degree angles, and this one, number 2, was a 45-degree angle. But number 1 is right here at a 65-degree angle southwest of the former mine pit. Number 2 was just north of it, went under the pit. Number 3 was here just to the west of the pit, also due south, also 65 degrees. And then holes 4 and 5, these both began with that sonic hole to get us through that loose, unconsolidated backfill material. And then once we hit the bedrock, we brought in the diamond rig to continue that hole down. This hole here, hole 4, went 600 vertical meters. No one has drilled that depth by half. So this was really an exciting hole because we're seeing new things that no one's ever seen. And when the results come back, it'll be very helpful. Our angle holes, the first few angle holes, we oriented the core, but we're also using sort of state-of-the-art technology with downhole televiewer, which gives us a 360-degree high-resolution image of these holes on the inside. So you're looking kind of on the walls of the hole all the way through, which is another way of orienting the core. And we think that given the fact that no one has ever drilled at depth here, as much information we can get from not just lithology, assays, geochemistry, but also from this oriented digital high-resolution downhole televiewer imagery is going to be very valuable in designing our program going forward. And just understanding the system. This is a complex geology, just like Hail down the road. The event just like that created the Brewer, that created Hail 550 million years ago, has seen multiple metamorphic events since then. So there's been a lot of folding and fracturing and faulting. There's a lot of brecciation. There's broken up rock. And you know, it took us a while to drill this phase. 2,700 meters over about the 10 weeks, if you take off some for Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, is not the fastest of paces. But also in this business, as some people know, sometimes where you have more difficult drilling conditions because of that broken and fractured rock conditions, sometimes it bodes well. And we do know that historically, thanks to our colleague Chris Cherrywell, that some of the most difficult holes that were drilled in the 1980s when he was there showed some of the best gold results. So we're not deterred by the difficulty that we've had in drilling. Hole 6, we stepped out to the south, several hundred meters of the south of the former mine, and it was right next to this RAB hole, which ran 3.6 grams of gold right at surface. That was again pointed due south at a 65-degree angle. And then our final hole, which we just finished yesterday afternoon, is hole number 7, and it was another step out hole a good bit ways northwest. And this historically is what's called the Topaz Pit area. An interesting fun fact is that the U.S. government explored for topaz here in the 1950s. There's a lot of topaz at Brewer, and one thing that we've seen historically and also from our RAB results is that it seems to be that when there's topaz, it bodes well for a correlation with gold. So topaz is 8 on the 1 through 10 hardness scale, and diamond is 10. And so when even if you have a diamond drill bit, it's pretty slow going and it's difficult getting through topaz. And we certainly saw that with a lot of these holes. I'm going to move down and just kind of wrap up here. But in the end of our, so I just want to highlight this table here shows all the details about what I just walked through with those 7 holes, including the sonic holes and total length and how long each hole was and the orientation. And then we included 2 core photos at the end of this news release. This one is a historic core. It's cut core from B97-4, which is, I reference back to that news release, the case study from our corporate presentation on slides 19 and 20 is this hole drilled in 1997. And you can just look at this photo and then look at this photo. And I'm sorry I have to toggle between, but if you have this in front of you now or later, you can see I'm not a geologist, but I can see striking similarities, and certainly our entire technical team is very encouraged by the near identical lithologies in those 2 images. And you know, this hole here, 97-4, had some pretty good gold values that are noted here in the news release. So that's it for my presentation, Campbell. I think it's a good time now to open things up for questions. Can you see me on the video?
Yeah.
I think I took off my screen. Okay.
Yeah, but you should have your screen up. So maybe a location map would be great.
Sure.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So thank you for sending in these questions, audience. We'll start with this one. were you able to see VG in the core that was drilled, visible gold?
Thank you for that question. I'm chuckling simply because I've actually received that question from a lot of people. It's a reasonable question, and I'm not in a position to answer that question. I can say that we like the rock that we've seen, and we're very excited for the results to come back. I'm very encouraged.
Does hail, is that typical to have a lot of VG?
I am not sort of a geological expert on hail. I will tell you that one of our geologists, a
Or
gentleman,
just anecdotally? I mean, is it?
yeah, one of our geologists, Jake Lindsay, who works with us, used to work at Hale. And anecdotally, he told me once when I asked him that he does recall that.
And back in the 19th century gold rush, that's about how they found the gold. They had to see it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So I would think that would be typical of the area. Okay. There's a property to the southwest of Brewer called Buzzard that was drilled years back with good results. Looks like that trend is headed right for Brewer. Any thoughts on that property and how it may relate, or give some ideas of what may be at Brewer?
Thank you for that question.
That's a great question, and help us laymen with a map. Perfect.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to do this map, but really quickly, I'm going to go back to this photo here, this image. Chris Capps knows the Buzzard project better, or as well at least, than anyone. He was there and drilled it in 1997. It was drilled again in 2011 by another company. It is a high-grade near-surface gold project, and we're very familiar with it. And now I'm going to toggle back to this, which is a very technical-looking slide, and it is. But I show this because here is Brewer. Can you see my cursor move, Campbell? Yeah. So here's Brewer. Yeah. And then southwest down here, you can see it's not necessarily highlighted here, but right next to the Lynch's River, which goes over here, is the Buzzard prospect. And you can just see here from this technical looking, and you can see, here this generalized ductile shear zone is noted kind of going along trend. By trend, I mean the Carolina Slate Belt goes, if you zoom out, it goes from Alabama up past DC and Virginia. And so it's going from southwest to northeast. And to that point, hail is down here. So yeah, I think that there's something to be said that Buzzard has some kind of connectivity to the Brewer system along the trend. I would further go to say that Pancon, as a part of the Jefferson Project, we drilled in 2016 and 2017 what's called Anomaly A, and intersected gold, as did previous explorers, and that's right up here. So it does corroborate this very consistent trend of gold, and it also underscores that Brewer is a very big system with a lot of tentacles, if you will. I often think of it as, if you think of a big city, well, Charlotte, it's a growing city, but we got a million plus people, but it's also a lot of suburbs. So you got a downtown and you got your suburbs. Well, Brewer, the downtown is right here. We know that it's very, very highly altered rock, and we know there's gold and we know there's copper, but you're also seeing things like Buzzard and Anomaly A. So it's all very encouraging. Campbell?
Sure. Could you just go over your insider holdings? Has it increased or decreased since the last webinar, which was in November? And in any event, could you talk about float and tradable shares around, and what you're doing and what you plan to do on the investor awareness department, given you're such a small and early stage company?
Thank you. Insider holdings are not decreasing at all. On the contrary, they are increasing. You can see here the numbers speak for themselves. We've got 242.7 million shares out. We've got 21.5 million options, 65 million warrants. That all in, fully diluted, is about 330 million. I noted this before when I was going through the presentation on this pie chart here, that you got more than half of the shares in hands that I consider known and with good relationships and friendly, if you will. We are seeing in recent days an increase in our trading volumes. And so I think that is a segue to the final part of that question, Campbell, which is about market awareness. Some of you may be aware that in 2020, we did 2 financings, both for 3 million Canadian dollars. The first one was a non-brokered financing in March. The second one was both a brokered and non-brokered. The brokered part was with Paradigm Capital in Toronto. And after the second financing in September, we immediately allocated some of those funds on a very targeted basis to increase our activity in market awareness and outreach and engagement. And so phone calls, Zoom meetings, webinars, you know, all day, every day, all night, it feels like, for me and Janie So, who's on this call, who manages our investor relations, and some other colleagues that we've brought on to help us, including Amvest Capital, and you got Stuart and you got Campbell here. We've been working so hard just to get awareness, get on people's radar screens, let them know who we are. We also put out videos, short videos, 2 to 3 to 4 minutes. They're on YouTube on the Pancon Resources channel. They're on our website under the videos tab. We've gotten some good feedback on that people appreciate seeing what we're doing more or less in real time. And I think that, you know, the market awareness work, it's like if you're going to plant a garden or build a farm, you got to prepare the soil and get it ready, and you plant the seeds, and you don't expect those crops to come up overnight. But I think after 3 months of very hard work, I think we're starting to get a little bit of traction. And so we won't stop, and we're tireless. And there's a lot of companies out there vying for attention and vying for, you know, resource investment, and we're one of them. We're also listed, as you mentioned at the top, Campbell, on the OTC in the US, on the QB Venture Exchange under the ticker symbol here, PUCCF. And this is a US-based asset. I'm in the US. Most of our team is based here in the US, as I've mentioned, the technical team. And it is a Canadian company, but we want to increase the number of institutional and retail investors in the US who are aware of us and who are following us. So that's what we're working very hard at.
Excellent. Stu?
I think I'd just like to add, well, thanks for the presentation and update, but that Leighton's number plate is the US ticker from memory when I went down to site.
Yeah. On the front of my truck, it says PUCCF. That's true.
Yeah, always advertising.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the drilling, you know, hole 4 down to 600 meters, that's pretty interesting, and, you know, should help guide like the upside case to see what is at depth, given, you know, the previous operators only went down to mine the oxide level ore.
Yes.
Yeah. And then how deep were some of the other ones?
Right. So I'm going to actually refer to the table. Trying to move my news release around a little bit here. There's the table. So let's just go through it. Hole 1, which was southwest of the mine, was a total of 341 meters at a 65-degree angle. Hole 2 was 314 meters. That was north of the old mine pit, and it went underneath. I will tell you, that was a difficult hole to drill, and we put out a few videos of that, including some drone footage, which gives you a really cool bird's eye view. And in those videos, I remember commenting that, wow, this is a really tough hole to drill. Faults and a lot of breccia and cracked up rock. Hole 3 was 503 meters. That was to the west of the former mine at a 65-degree angle. So Sonic Hole 1 went down through the former backfill material, 55.5 meters. And then what continued was what you just noted there, Stuart, is Hole 4. And Hole 4 went down for a total of 599.45 meters, so just under 600 meters. Again, no one's ever done that. And I will tell you that the geologists were struck. They kept talking about how about halfway down that hole, they said, we're just seeing new kinds of rock that we've never seen in the historic core. It's just we're in a new zone. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted to see what the deeper zones look like. Of course, the assays will tell us more in the multi-element geochemistry, but that's a 600 meter vertical hole. Sonic hole 2, which is 100 meters north of Sonic hole 1. So hole 5 is 100 meters due north of hole 4. And hole 5 is basically a twin of BDH002 from our case study on slides 19 and 20 of the presentation that was drilled in 1983 by Chris Cherrywell. That Sonic hole went down 65 meters. So that's worth noting, because you can see a little variance in the backfill. And the former pit, obviously wasn't flat. It had some depth in some places. And so our first Sonic hole went down 55 meters before it got into bedrock. And the second one almost 66 meters before it got into bedrock. Hole 5 was a vertical hole that went a total of 266 meters. And like hole 2, golly, that sure was hard to drill. And I give my hat off to Logan Drilling, the company we use. Is a Canadian company based in Halifax, but they're U.S. subsidiaries out of Sandersville, Georgia, and they just did a heck of a job sticking with it on hole 5. And hole 5, the lithology, that's what we're showing in this photo here at the bottom of this news release. It's fantastic looking rock. Hole 6 was 286.8 meters. South of the old mine. And then Stuart, just to finish out here, hole 7, again, a step out hole to the north, about half a kilometer northwest in that topaz rich zone, which we TD'd yesterday. It was a 380 meter hole.
Great. It's very exciting. And then, so the phase 2 drill targets, will you wait to get the phase 1 results before finalizing those locations?
It's an excellent question.
Updating your geological interpretation.
Yeah, ideally that's exactly what we would do, but we are working the best we can to manage these delays from the lab. So I mentioned earlier kind of our two-step process we've done to shorten that timetable, but that is our intention, Stu, is to get that information, compile the data, grow our model, put together, plot the holes and show them graphically before we plot phase 2 drill holes. Having said that, because our team lives, eats, and breathes this project 7 days a week, we talk about this all the time. And so we do have in our heads already ideas for phase 2. So we are not flat-footed at all, but we definitely we love to be driven by data, and that's our intention. And so we need some data to help us make the best next decision.
Yep, understandable. And then just one quick question before to Artie. Recent share price movement has been pretty positive, and nice to see it past, go up past the deal price from that last financing you mentioned. Any comments on, the activity you've seen come through from buying?
Only that it reminds me of what I said earlier. If you're going to plant a garden or a farm, you got to prepare the soil and you plant the seeds, and with sunlight and water, you see things sprout. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And I'd like to give again my hat off to our entire Pancon team. We have a small team. We work very well together. We respect each other, and we all work very hard. And so I'm just grateful to everyone who's a part of our team, who's helped get the word out and get the awareness out. And so it's nice to see those efforts paying off.
Yep, definitely. Thanks for that, Artie.
Thank you. What are some challenges drilling through the reclaimed pit? Why do you use camera to follow the holes?
So those are two questions, I think.
Yeah.
So the challenges are, it's loose material. Drilling anything is easier when it's competent and compact and not broken up. It's just that simple. And so we made a strategic decision anticipating that using a diamond drill rig through the reclaimed material would be problematic. We brought in a sonic drill rig. Sonic, it's what it sounds like, and it uses very strong vibrational technology to bring up the material. It can drill through sand even. And we found a company in South Carolina. They did a great job. They're called Cascade, and they did these two holes. Hole 4 was relatively smooth on the sonic side. Hole 5, sorry, the beginning of hole 5, sonic hole 2, was a little more difficult. So we're glad we did that. We learned a lesson, not a lesson, but we learned from experience back in the fall, back in August and September, when we drilled these 7 RAB, rotary air blast holes, of how difficult it would be to drill through the material. I think your second question was about the downhole televiewer technology.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So really, again, like any, I think, good and smart exploration company, we're going to want to leverage any and all technology that we can, you know, assuming we could do it at a reasonable cost. And this is a great example of that. It used to be, before this technology existed, that, you know, it was very wise to orient core. You can't orient vertical core, but anything with an angle you can orient, meaning you mark on the core when it comes out exactly where north, south, east, and west is, and it helps you better understand, frankly, the system better, and the structure, and any controls that are there. It helps you visualize where that particular core is sitting and what might be around it and what might be influencing it. So what this technology does, it simply takes all that to another level where it's visual. And it's like, if you can imagine the camera being in there and being able to look in a 360-degree direction all around, it gives you information that traditional orienting cannot give you. And so we did a test on our hole number 1 and our hole number 3. We brought in televiewer technology, and our entire team, you know, unanimously said, this is worth it. And this is going to be very helpful for us once we get back all the assay and the multi-element geochemistry data from the labs, to then really understand, or better understand, what's going on in this system.
Thank you. So what is the focus for you in the deeper portion of the old pit or the new areas? And like, even they haven't drilled the lowest part of the pit before they fill it.
Right. Thank you. That's a good question. And let me just step back 1 second and remind everyone here that the U.S. Geological Survey in the 1970s referred to Brewer as having a porphyry signature. It's sort of conventional wisdom that, unlike Hale and frankly, unlike other prospects and mines along the Carolina Slate Belt, Brewer is the only one with this sort of porphyry-like signature. And the fact that we know that there is copper near the surface at Brewer corroborates that. So when you ask what is our goal in going underneath the old pit, I would tell you that one of the things we would love to do is to better understand where is the former heat engine or the intrusive that would have been associated way back when, 550 million years ago, with the original mineralizing event. So that's one thing that's on our minds and that we're certainly hunting here. But in addition to that, I think that there's something emerging here where we might be able to see a zone that I wouldn't call deep, but I wouldn't call it surface either. Something that's sort of between, say, 100 and maybe 300 or 400 meters under the surface. And again, the assays will tell us the details here. But I go back to what we said in our news release about the identical lithologies underneath the mine. For the former mine, from what we saw in our holes 4 and 5, and what some of the historic core from B97-4 and BDH002 show. And we know that those holes ran really good on the gold side. And I think on the copper side, though, we can't access those assays right now. And so if that's true, there's something to be said for looking for a new deposit, or defining a resource kind of in that 100 to 400 meter area below the former mine and near the former mine as well.
And for the past producing mine, what were the challenges when they were processing the material? What grades they were mining, and why they didn't consider processing the sulfates?
I think their cutoff grade was 0.4 grams. I think their average head grade was 2.5. Though the data though is not, you know, those are all historic data, and we don't really have full confidence in it. So that's anecdotal. But their biggest challenge was very simple. They were hitting sulfide material within 30 meters of going down in that pit, which is very shallow. And I think they were a little surprised by that. I think it was problematic because their heap leach operation was designed for oxide processing, gold that has been fully oxidized. And they tried sort of partially oxidized, still sulfide sort of hybrid material. They tried to leach it. To my understanding, they weren't successful. And that's the material they put back into the former pit along with that waste rock. And that to us is a potential resource, a near surface potential resource in that former pit.
Thank you, Campbell.
Did radioactive X-ray show gold and other metals in the core that was drilled?
So I think you're referring to X-ray diffraction, the XRD.
I'll defer to the questioner.
Okay. Yeah, X-ray diffraction. I ask you simply because it's what we refer to in our news release here, where its goal is to look for all the various minerals, so we better understand the mineralogy. And it's not really looking for gold. It's not an assay per se.
Okay. Any other minerals targeted other than gold with the hole 7?
With hole 7, well, first of all, gold is number 1, copper is number 2. We know from some samples we've done of some of the sludge, the on-surface material that has been a part of the wastewater treatment process, that there's a whole suite of rare earths elements. We're very encouraged by that, and we're continuing to, as a part of our multi-element geochemistry, look for that. And we're also being creative with our thinking. I'll very briefly mention that there's a product called industrial mineral called mullite, which is mostly synthetic, and all the ingredients to make mullite, which is used in refractory processes, in steel making, in ceramics, all the ingredients to make mullite exist at Brewer, and topaz is a super special ingredient for making mullite. So I'm not saying we're getting distracted by things like that. What I am saying is that Brewer has an abundance of minerals. I mean, almost everything on the periodic table seems to be at Brewer in some shape, form, or another, or at least a lot of it. But very clearly, gold is number 1, and I would say copper is number 2, and whatever else we can find and what might have economic value, certainly we're going to study that.
I had sent to you a few days ago a question or a concern of the overburden for the area. Maybe let's repeat that question, and in layman's terms, is there a lot of surface you got to dig through, and could it be a problem?
Yeah, you know, we are in an interesting, let me quickly toggle here, and I'm going back to our presentation, and I'm going right here. And you can see this map here, and look at the legend. In the yellow, it says coastal plain sediments, right? And you can see the reason the Carolina Slate Belt exists really is all this gold is right at what's called a contact, which is basically the boundary between this coastal plain sediment, which is obviously right here on the coast, going down from Georgia to South Carolina, North Carolina, up through the Atlantic coast. And then here, Carolina Slate Belt, Charlotte Belt, Piedmont terrain, this is much harder rock. There's a lot of granite in here. And so you can see on this contact line, we're just, as is Hale, just on that line. So if you're more in this yellow area, you're gonna have a lot more issues with overburden. And it's gonna be sandy material. We don't really have that here. In fact, at Brewer of the 1,000 acres, there's quite a bit of outcropping, which is information. It allows us to better understand what's going on. And so the overburden issue, Campbell, is not significant for us.
Okay, great. Stu, had 2 questions, and then we'll wrap up. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. And so just touching back on the copper, you know, do you understand the metallurgy yet? And, you know, would the copper interfere with the gold recovery, or would it be considered a revenue contributor? Or is it too early?
Those are all excellent questions. And I can say this, they're all questions that we're asking ourselves and that we are doing some initial research, desktop research. We're looking at metallurgy of the material that we're seeing and that we're finding at Brewer, both on the gold side and on the copper side. But it's simply too early to get into anything. We just don't know enough. But we are encouraged by what we're seeing and what we're thinking. And again, looking at the historic data, to see copper values at 0.5% copper and more relatively close to surface is pretty encouraging.
Yeah, definitely. And so at the end of the 10,000 meter drill program, would you anticipate like a resource update at all? Or when would you be considering that?
Again, an excellent question. Difficult to answer. As you've heard me talk today, you know, I could envision a potential resource in the old pit, in that reclaimed material. I could envision a potential resource 100 to 300 meters below the old pit in kind of what I would call a near upper zone. And then over time, it will take certainly a lot more drilling than 10,000 meters, but I could envision in the future a resource potential for something deeper, maybe on the order of 500 to 800 meters below surface. And again, we're looking for that deeper heat engine, that intrusive from the original mineralizing event. So it's hard to say what we're going to be able to actually prove with 10,000 meters. But I think we're going to be well on our way to fleshing out that kind of framework I just articulated.
Got it. Thanks for that, Campbell.
Sure. Thank you everyone for tuning in today and catching the Pancon story. And you can catch this and other events at amvestcapital.com/webinars. And Pancon has alluded to a robust social media and video component, keeping everyone updated. And you can always, not too much trouble, get Leighton on the phone or send him an email. We'll be queuing you for feedback. Please share a few lines. Very, very appreciated, and we'll get back to Leighton almost immediately. And then, you know, the final question: why buy now? How many of these kind of press releases can we expect?
Why buy now? Because we're cheap. It's cheap. It's a great time to buy. And everything I've said, I think, points in a very good direction. I couldn't be more confident about this, and we're working, you know, just tirelessly on this project. So I think it's a great buy.
And when do you think you'll be talking about phase 2?
In the coming weeks. And the last thing I want to say, Campbell, is I live here in Charlotte. I go down to the project every day, sometimes 7 days a week, and I love talking to people. I'm always available on my phone. And if you live somewhere in this area or you're ever coming through this area, I realize we have COVID. We're going to wear masks. We're going to keep distance, but I'd love to meet anyone, have you see our project, have you see our office in the town of Jefferson. And you know, we really do like to share our story however we can.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.